Welcome to Beyond Table Talk, a space for real people and real conversations that move us from awareness to action. Each episode dives deep into the issues that impact our daily lives, financially, emotionally, and socially, with real talk from real people. We're so glad you've joined us, and we've got a powerful conversation ahead. Whether you're tuning in live or catching the replay, thank you for being a part of this community. Now let's get into it. Meet your moderator for this episode.
Welcome to Beyond Table Talk, a signature conversation series powered by the Association for Black Economic Power. I'm Sharon Taylor, your moderator for this evening's conversation. We're going to have a very important discussion around Secure the Bag, Then the Deed, First-Time Home Buyer Secrets Shared. For many, buying a home is one of the biggest financial decisions and moves of a lifetime. But the process can feel very overwhelming, filled with unfamiliar terms, decisions that are constant decisions, and potential pitfalls. Tonight, we're going to demystify the home buying journey with our trusted experts who will break down this essential of financing, selecting a right property, and protecting your investment for long-term success. I am very excited to introduce to you incredible panelists and our experts for tonight. I'll introduce them by name and then invite them to tell us a little bit more about their home buying expertise. Starting with Brandon Odom.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Odom. I am an agent with Edina Realty, and tonight I'll serve as the real estate expert walking you all through the home buying process.
Thank you and welcome, Brandon. Our next panelist is Pia Tebow, a personal risk specialist. What does that mean for tonight's conversation, Pia?
Hi, thanks, Sharon. I am an insurance agent that will discuss the importance of the insurance piece of the home purchasing process, making sure we protect your biggest asset properly.
Thank you, Pia. And our last and final panelist is Diane. I want to make sure I get this right. Walenta. Diane Walenta. She's a senior mortgage loan officer. Welcome.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm so excited to be here. So I am as Sharon mentioned, a loan officer. I work for First Bank and Trust here in the metro area. I've been a loan officer. I won't tell you how long. It's been forever, but really with a focus and a financial interest in an interest in doing financial education. It's really become my passion, teaching people how to buy a house, knowing everything they need to know about that financial piece of this process, because it can be confusing. So thanks, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Wonderful. I am too. Let's dive right into our conversation. So viewers, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please feel free to drop your questions or in comments into the chat, and we will try to get our panelists to answer those as soon as we can. Our first question, I'm going to go back to you, Diane.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you spoke about, I'm going to say, before a first-time buyer even starts house hunting, so before they're thinking about this, what kind of financial foundation should they focus on building? And then I'm going to ask you a second part to that question. How many income streams or saving reserves do you recommend them having in place to help truly secure the bag? And can you tell us about that?
Yeah, definitely. So the very first thing I tell my clients is really know your budget. I want to make sure you understand the financial obligation you're getting into. It's not like renting an apartment because you just pay the monthly rent every month, but with a home, a lot of other things come up. So we want to make sure you're financially prepared. So the first thing is you want to, before you go out looking at properties and before I send you off to Brandon, I want you really getting pre-approved. Sit down with a lender. Go through your credit report. Make sure you understand your credit report and what it says about you. And then also talk about your income, your steady income. You mentioned a little bit about income streams. We want to make sure that you can support that payment for that mortgage payment. So you want to be educated along the way. So not only sit down with the lender, get pre-approved for that mortgage. So really, that means going through your credit, your income, your assets, where's the money coming from, and having a good understanding about that, but also understanding your budget and where that payment fits into your budget. The other thing I always recommend is take a first time home buyer class. Get educated. An educated buyer is such a much better buyer when they're out looking at homes. So really that's the first place to start is you start with me. And then you talk about all the other fun things. I always tell people I torture you first, and then Brandon gets to have the fun part of showing you houses. So that house shopping is the fun part, but you got to see me first.
Yeah, that's funny. You should use the word torture. That can be torture.
I'm sure some people feel like they've been tortured through the process, but again, we try and make it fun. So it's not as bad as it sounds. But again, I do a lot of educating along the way. So be prepared for that.
Nice. Okay. So make sure you get that pre-approval letter so you know what you're shopping for, and then some of the other tips that you mentioned.
Know
in
your
there.
budget. Yes.
Know your budget. Okay. Brandon, I am going to turn to you then. When you are touring homes, what are some of the common red flags you advise buyers to look out for? And yeah, what things should I be looking for? What things on their listing should they show up with?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I tend to try to focus on like big ticket items. You know, you have some things in a home that can be kind of cosmetic repairs, say you need a little paint here and there, a stain in the carpet, things of that nature. I feel like that kind of comes with the territory with just about any home. But as far as the big ticket items, I tend to pay attention to like the roof. You know, if you go outside and look at the roof of the home, is there like shingles missing? You know, does it looks like it's been pretty damaged? Busted chimney, anything like that. Within the home, are there stains, for instance, in the ceilings, on the walls, something that would suggest there's water intrusion or plumbing issues? Also, horizontal cracks along the walls, which would suggest that you may have a foundation issue. And all those things are kind of big ticket, pretty costly repairs. So, and then keep in mind too that any buyer should have a home inspected. So we do rely on the inspectors to really go through the home with a fine-tooth comb and point out anything that may be of concern.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot to be looking for. And I love that you mentioned an inspection. I think we'll touch on that a little bit later, like if that's a different cost or if that's a different need. So that may be one of the things that we figure out later on too about that inspection. We'll dive into that a little bit. But in the meantime, I want to jump to Pia. Many buyers don't fully understand their home owner's insurance until after the closing. So what should a buyer know up front? Like, so they talked to Diane, did some house hunting with Brandon, and now we're talking insurance world. So what are some things they should be concerned about looking out for in that insurance realm? But even before they begin house hunting.
Thanks for that question. The important thing is do not shop for your home insurance online. It is very important for you to have an agent, a broker that you're working with, someone who you can ask questions of, who can explain coverages and help tailor the program to fit your actual needs. A base homeowner's insurance policy covers certain things, but there's endorsements and exclusions that you may not understand going online. You might get a great price, but the most important part is you want a policy that's going to pay out at the time of loss. This is your biggest asset that you're purchasing. If you have a fire or something happens, you want to make sure that your policy is going to pay out. And those small fine print things that will be missed if you're online will be explained to you by an agent. So get in relationship with an insurance agent. Brokers will shop other carriers for you. Captive agents will just shop that one company, but having a great relationship with someone that you can trust, either way you decide to go, would be the first step, I would say. It's very important.
You mentioned relationship with that, and I love the tip about not necessarily online. I think people often reach to online as their go-to, but building relationship being really important. I'm going to shoot back to Brandon on that. I got a question from a viewer. and is how do you know if the realtor is a good fit? Like, what are some of the things or strategies or things that people should look for regarding that?
I think for first and foremost is whether you actually like the person you're dealing with. So if someone's going to be around, taking you around, showing you houses, working on kind of the contractual and legal aspects of your home purchase, do you actually feel like dealing with this person day in and day out while you're shopping for a home? So I think that's one of the big things. Also, I think it's noteworthy that most agents, even if they're not on like an official team, they do have the backing of everyone in their office. So if there's something that kind of comes up that, say, an agent may not know about directly or haven't dealt with before, they can talk to their managing broker, someone else in the office, and typically all questions do get answered. And the service can be pretty good. So I think you just want somebody, again, that you like, somebody who's responsive, who will show up and be there for you and advocate on your behalf.
Okay, so
Sharon,
liking.
can
Yep,
I just
Diane, you
jump
want
in
to
here
jump
real
in?
quick? And I think
Yeah.
that it's such an important topic that people understand that Pia is exactly right. Doing things online may be convenient for you, but again, you need somebody, you need to build that team behind you. You need to build your village or your team that's going to help you through this process because it's not it can be complicated and you want to make sure you understand. So take the time to find that team, not only the agent, real estate agent, but the mortgage person, the insurance agent, and build that to make sure that you're all working together as a team. So really important topic.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in that too, Diane, because that
Mhm.
team, even the word team, and Pia brought up the relationship. It at one point it can be very overwhelming for all of the new faces or relationships that you're building to know, like, okay, Brandon's my realtor, Diane's my mortgage, Pia is my insurance, and so having that clearly defined and knowing who people are and building that relationship is an excellent point. Thanks for bringing that up.
Mhm.
Another question from a viewer. The question is, since you mentioned team, and Brandon brought up earlier, making sure that it is important to have an inspector, who selects an inspector, and how do you figure that out?
Yeah. So usually I'll tell my clients, that I have a few different inspectors that I work with. They can pick from the list of inspectors that I have, but they're also welcome to shop for their own. Um, so it's really up to the buyer to kind of decide. Only thing I would say is that if there's an inspector that I've never heard of before, I can't necessarily guarantee like the quality of the service that they'll provide. Whereas if it's an inspector that I have a relationship with, I can guarantee that pricing is fair and they'll get their money's worth with the inspection.
Okay. Thank you for that. I am aware too, if it's licensed positions, Minnesota is part of where I work. I don't know if I said the Department of Commerce is where you can actually go onto their website and look at that. That's one of the Minnesota protections through Department of Commerce. And thanks for bringing that up, Brandon, that making sure they're licensed. And it sounds like, to answer this viewer's question, who selects the inspector? Realtors may have a list that they work with, but I
Yep.
love the fact that you said, but you're welcome to find your own. If you have someone, and back to Pia's point, what's that relationship like with that person? How knowledgeable are they? And how do you move through that? Excellent. Now I want to jump back to Diane. Diane, earlier you talked about pre-approval.
Mhm.
And if this is a new term for me and buying a house for the first time, can you go into what should a first time buyer realistically know about the mortgage and pre-approval process before they even start house hunting? I'm going to go back to that.
Perfect. Yes. So again, that's where we start at that pre-approval. So that pre-approval process, when you meet with that loan officer, we're going to sit down and we're going to go through your credit report and look at your credit scores. And then also, I like to do a little educating and show people what their credit report says and what it says about you, what I look for in your credit report. So really, you want to think about really the three C's of financial credit, and that's your credit report, the collateral, which will be the property, which we won't get to in that pre-approval, but again, we'll get to a price range. And then where the assets are coming from, where's the money coming from? So your down payment. And I know we'll get into kind of some down payment assistance talk later, but where's the money coming from for the down payment and closing costs? How are you going to pay for this house? And then also your income. So we're going to talk about your income, your job. How are you paid? There's a difference between somebody who's paid hourly and somebody who's paid salary, and how I look at it. So again, I'm going to ask you 1,000 questions about all of these different things, and just again, be patient with me. I know I'm asking you 1,000 questions, but again, it's really just to kind of get to that fine tune that pre-approval for you. So putting all the pieces of this puzzle, and so I kind of call it a puzzle, putting all these pieces of the puzzle together to really come up with that magic number. What do you qualify for? So again, I can write a pre-approval for what I tell you you qualify for. It may be nowhere what you want to pay. So again, that's where I go back to thinking, I want you thinking about your budget. What does your budget say? I may say you qualify for a monthly payment of $4,000 a month. And you may look at me and say, Diane, you're nuts. There's no way I'm paying that kind of money. So what you want to do then is I want you to tell me where that comfort level is. If it's only 2,500, okay, then I'm going to back that down and say, okay, then you really need to be looking in this price range of home. Before we send you off to Brandon, I want you knowing what that difference in payment is. So, so the other thing I want to point out is there's a difference between a pre-approval and a pre-qualification. So make sure you understand the terminology. A pre-qualification is really you telling a lender, well, this is what my credit score is, this is how much money I make, and I've got some money. And they're going to say, well, based on all that information, you qualify for X. I pretty much dig into it a little more and really get fine-tune it and really define. I don't want to send you after Brandon, you find a house, and then I totally disappoint you when I say you can't qualify because your income isn't what you said it was. So again, know the terminology. We all talk in a lot of acronyms. And so make sure you stop. If I say something you don't understand, ask 1,000 questions to make sure you know. Empowerment, knowledge is power.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that, Diane, because it does sound like torture when you say it like that.
We go back to that. Yes.
Go back to that. But I hear you also saying how important it is to know, one, the vocabulary, know where you stand with how much you qualify for. So you're not looking for a home that's more than you want to pay each month, or a home that you are telling your realtor to look for, and that's not the range you want to be.
Right.
That part is very critical. Thank you. Okay, beyond the torture, we're going to get to the happy place of being a first-time home buyer or buying another home. And so we have a question from our viewer, Ashley, who is calling in from Columbia, South Carolina. Will you bring her in, please?
Hi, thanks for taking my question. So how important is it to research a neighborhood before deciding to purchase a home?
How important is it to research the neighborhood? I wonder how many people do that. And Brandon, can I kick that question to you? How important is it?
Yeah, I think it can be pretty important. One of the things I would say is with the neighborhood that you're considering, is it in the school district that you like, that you want your kids to go to? Other things for consideration is what's the demographics of the neighborhood? Is it kind of a more vibrant, younger neighborhood with young families in? If you're looking for something that's more peaceful and quiet, maybe you don't fit into that neighborhood potentially. I would also recommend that if you're looking at a house, you find one that you're kind of interested in, drive by that neighborhood or that house at different times throughout the day. See what's going on over there, and if you like what you see or what's happening in that space. I think some of the cons of not doing those things and doing that research is that you could potentially end up with some neighbors you can't stand, right? Or, people are partying every weekend when you're trying to, hang out and read a book or something like that. So I think the biggest takeaway is just to really do your research and kind of determine if you would feel comfortable living in that neighborhood for the foreseeable future.
That's good advice. Yeah, and where you are, if you have a family, younger children, maybe you want parks around or something like that.
Sure.
If you're at a stage of life where you're going to bed at 9:15 like I do, everybody shut it down.
Right.
Thank you, thank you. Pia, looked like you wanted to jump in on something. Did you have one you want to add to that?
I do, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So when insurance is considered, if you're in an area where there's a lot of insurance claims filed, it makes higher rates for your insurance. So that's one thing that you can take into consideration as well. The probability of loss in this area, if it's high, you're going to be rated a little bit higher. Those are things that you could kind of Google. Those are things that if you have your relationship with your agent, that they can kind of help you steer you in a different direction if need be, or just explain some of the hazards and things to kind of look for when trying to purchase something in that area to keep costs down for your insurance premiums.
That is very, very wise to know that from on the front end, like have that information to you, like you can research that. Oh, let's see. I'm going to go back to you, Pia, a little bit more in depth on that. What are some of the most common risks that new homeowners face? Like you shared that one. I hadn't considered that, like looking into the insurance before you even purchase in that area. But say you've already purchased a new home. What are some of the risks that people face and often, and they may not be fully covered by some of the standard policies? Can you go into that a little bit?
Sure. So there's some base coverage included in the homeowner's policy. All of the coverages are going to automatically be there. Things like the dwelling itself, your personal property is always included. Your liability for what's going on the property is included. There's some medical payments included if somebody gets injured on your property, things like that. Things that are not included are water loss. If you have a sump pump malfunction, if your toilet or sink malfunctions and start spewing water everywhere, if you don't have an endorsement on your policy, that's not covered. And the limit of that coverage needs to be high enough to repair or replace the water issue and your personal property's damage in that area. So if you have a finished basement, a lot of items down there, $50,000, a decent amount, water is very intrusive, water is very damaging. Making sure you have those limits in place are very important. That's one of the reasons why I say make sure you talk to an agent versus going online, because it's going to give you the base policy without the endorsements, without those bells and whistles that you need. The second biggest claim on homes in the state of Minnesota are water. The first one is your roof. The second one is water. If you don't have that water coverage, you can be severely out of pocket for a lot of money. So that's very important. That's just one of the things to look for, making sure you have the proper coverage in place. Another thing is a home insurance policy is not a maintenance policy. If you have something that just fails because it's old or it just broke for no reason, let's say a furnace or something like that, you can get coverage in your homeowner's policy for that. However, if it breaks for no reason, that's not a homeowner's issue. That's a warranty issue. So making sure other places that you can have coverages, purchase a home warranty, CenterPoint Energy, some of the companies that offer power have policies that you can get on your home equipment. Just making sure you have coverage for all of these items in other areas, so you're not trying to file homeowners claims for these things. Because unlike auto insurance, you file several auto claims, the auto insurer pay them or they won't, but they'll allow you to keep coverage. With your homeowner's insurance, if you have 2 claims in a 5-year period, your company can ask you to go elsewhere. They can say they don't want to cover you anymore. And then on top of that, you have increased premiums for 5 years until one of these claims fall off. This happens whether they pay the claim or not. You file the claim whether it's covered or not. Now this is a ding on your file. So this is something that you want to make sure you're placing coverage elsewhere. You have a relationship with the agent, an independent agent that works for you, that can talk these things through to make sure that you're not filing frivolous claims or doing things to cost you more harm and more money out of your pocket in the future.
Wow. I mean, you just dropped the mic on that one. I was like, hold on. Because One, I did not know. 5 years, they could kick you out, whether they pay it or not.
Yes.
That's crazy. Okay. So some of the things that you mentioned too is making sure, especially in Minnesota. Now we have other viewers from various states. This is a wide broadcast. So here in Minnesota, people may not recognize it, but we do have that. We need that flood coverage for a lot of places, depending on where you buy, but also for the things that you mentioned. I know that water damage could happen here in Minnesota with freezing pipes. But we don't want to talk about that. It's a nice summer day here. But in other places, this is great knowledge for people who live elsewhere too, who are viewing with us today. But checking in their area, what are those add-on policies such as flood? And back to the relationship, where I guess people would ask that. You talked about the power company. Here we use Excel, and that's various places too. But making sure you had a point around that too, making sure you can look in some of their warranty things, but not. I love the way you said it's not a maintenance policy. Insurance isn't. I was like, oh, okay. Well, thanks for that. But what do you recommend? I see I have a viewer who has a question. And the question is around the insurance. Like, is the insurance attached to the mortgage? Like, is that something you can do?
Well, you can escrow your insurance with your mortgage, depending on your scenario with your loan officer. That is an option where they'll work those monies into your monthly payment and for your mortgage. Yes, that is an option that some people have to go with. And some people, depending on, I guess, your down payment amount, you don't actually have to escrow, but you can attach that. But we want to make sure we remember with the insurance policies that we're discussing as well, that flood insurance is a separate insurance. That water sewer backup is an endorsement on your homeowner's policy. There's insurance for service line coverage, your underground sewer and utility lines. All three of these are separate things. The sewer line and the water sewer backup could be on your homeowners, but that flood policy is a completely separate policy with a separate premium. I just wanted to point that out because I didn't think I did that earlier. Yeah.
That's critical, because back to what Diana's talking about earlier, your pre-approval is one thing and affordability of the house, but when you add on and you tack on those additional insurance components, and then I guess that would determine too, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, or anyone jump in, how much home you really want to purchase at that point. Once you know, we've been diving into some areas that I know people, it may not have been forefront of your mind, because depending on where you live and depending on your insurance, how much your monthly may be.
Yeah, as part of your mortgage process, we will do that flood certification. So if it's in a federally designated floodplain, the mortgage company will require flood insurance on the property. So you don't even have an option. We will require you take that out just like your homeowner's insurance policy. But again, there's nothing to say, and Pia, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can get flood insurance if you're not in that designated area. We will only require it if it is. The mortgage company will.
Okay, I have another viewer question, and this was kind of funny to me, but what's a good way to make sure you're not in the house poor? Can someone tell me, what do you mean by that? And what's that, go into that. What is house poor after you purchase a house? What does that mean? Brandon?
Diane, okay. Well, to me, when I hear house poor, I feel like that's a mortgage payment that only allows you to pay the mortgage and do nothing else. So to Diane's point, I think it's very important to kind of know where you want to land up front as far as your monthly payments. And then that kind of set the parameters for the price range of the homes that you shop for. Because I do think, with my background also in finance outside of real estate, I do think it is very important to have, a home that allows you to live comfortably, but also enjoy life at the same time, make outside investments and other things, and, really have it be a piece of your overall financial picture as opposed to the only piece.
Okay, that's what Diane was pointing to, and thanks for reiterating that and shedding the real estate lens on it. Diane, is there something you want to add to that?
No, I I think house poor is a great term. And again, you need to be comfortable with your budget, and truly you need to think. Don't listen to somebody who tells you, well, you can qualify for much more, and then you go spend and you buy that higher priced home, and then that's all you do is sit in your home and don't do anything else, except eat at McDonald's because that's all you're going to do. So you want to be able to enjoy life alongside and invest and do all those other things. Plan your future. What if children come along and it's your first home and you all of a sudden now have children, you have daycare? Think through these things that are the possibilities for the future and what you'll need to pay for. And make sure you have money left over. Yeah, I do not like stretching people to their maximums. It just makes me so uncomfortable. So um, know what that limit is for you and where that comfort level is. A tip
Mhm.
I always give my buyers is if they're paying now, if they're paying $1,500 a month in rent and they think they're okay going to a $2,500 a month house payment, I
Mhm.
say, okay, pretend you're making that $2,500 a month house payment now. Put that extra $1,000 in a savings account for the next 4 to 5 months. You'll now know, okay, can I do that? Am I comfortable making that payment? Worst case scenarios, you've now saved $4 or $5,000 in your savings account. So again, you've then now proven to yourself that you're okay making that kind of payment. So plan ahead, just don't jump into buying this house, the first house you see with all the shiny objects. Plan ahead and be prepared.
Yeah, at one point I did hear the people saying, buy as much house as you can qualify for,
Oh,
with the
Lordy, no.
idea, like the notion that later you'll have more profits. And so
Yeah,
that's where I guess the house poor kind of thing has come
yeah.
from that, huh? Buying to your max.
Right.
And
And that went on in that whole mortgage crisis. And
mm-hmm,
unfortunately, so many people got in trouble and just could not do it and lost their homes to foreclosure. And we just don't want to go back there. So,
yeah.
again, plan ahead and be prepared.
Perfect. And nothing against McDonald's, Diane.
No, nothing
But
against McDonald's, but I thought that about our first house. We'd never eat anywhere but McDonald's again. But again, so that's always stuck with me all these years. But
yeah.
so
But
yes, no,
to your point, and I think each of you have made this point, buy a home that's affordable and that you can have a lifestyle afterwards.
yeah,
That you're not all of a sudden pinched to the core.
yeah.
Okay. And so with that being said, let's talk a little bit. I'm going to just bounce it back to Pia as we talk to what's the difference between a market value of a house and replacement costs in homeowners policy. As you were talking about that and making sure we have those add-on those additional coverages to protect us. What is the difference between that? And that is something that you might hear from insurance agents.
Sure. So when you're looking at the market value of the home, the cost of the land and the area is included in that. When we're looking at insurance, we're only looking at the replacement cost of the home itself. So we're taking into consideration if you have a loss at your home, let's say part of it's damaged, it's half standing, and they have to remove all of the debris, get everything ready to rebuild your home. That's the dollar amount that they're going to place on your home in order to replace it as is in like kind quality. So if you have custom details, the policy should replace it custom, standard. But that value a lot of times is going to be a little bit more depending on where you're at than the purchase price. So you may purchase your home for this amount, $250,000. The insurance company is saying we need to insure it for $325,000. That's an argument that I have with clients a lot. I just want to explain that they want to make sure if there's a labor shortage, if there's a inflation, if something's going on and now things are costing a little bit more, we want to pad that policy up a little bit. So when your home is rebuilt, you don't have to come out of pocket with monies yourself. With the tariffs coming into place, a lot of our lumber here in Minnesota comes from Canada, meaning that as we're building these homes, that's going to cost a little bit more. You want all of that incorporated into your policy so you can be made whole. The point of insurance is to be transfer the risk from you to the insurance company to make you back whole, indemnify you at the time of loss. We need to make sure we have those limits properly placed in order to do so. So that would be the difference for that. And then when you're looking at these replacement costs is what you want, not actual cash value. Replacement cost is going to be the cost new. Actual cash value is that depreciated value. So make sure if you see these terms on your policies that you're questioning your agent so you fully understand what it is that you're purchasing.
That's, yeah, very wise. And that goes back to having that relationship, and you can call somebody, speak to, versus online where you might not have that.
You know, a lot of people don't like insurance because they feel like when they need it, it doesn't come into play and pay the way they expect it to. And most of the time that's because they don't have what they thought they were purchasing. It wasn't explained properly, or they didn't understand what they actually were purchasing. They believe I'm just paying for insurance. It should swoop in and save me. But if you don't have those actual coverages in place properly, telling the truth on the application, things like that, then when it comes time, they will very gladly say, no, thank you. We are not going to help you. So that's where that relationship comes into play as well.
Wow. Okay, that is critical, especially if something should happen and I need, you have that replacement cost. So that means at that time, 2 years later, 5 years later, you can get your home repaired for replacement costs. And I heard you talk about the market shifting. That may be more expensive. People should be aware of that.
Yep.
Okay.
Definitely.
Wonderful. I'm going to say, yeah, I'm glad. Thanks for clearing that up. And since you bring that up, I want to talk to Brandon about, you brought up the market, Pia. So I want to jump to Brandon to say, in today's market, is it better to buy a move-in ready home or consider property that needs like some renovations? What should a first-time buyer consider?
I think it's kind of dependent on the person. You know, everybody's scenario can be a little different. I would probably maybe lean towards buying something that's move-in ready unless you have the skill set to kind of do some repairs on a home. Probably the nature of the repairs that may be needed if it's a fixer-upper. I mean, it's different. Again, like, you know, throwing up a little paint, you know, getting some new carpet. That's fairly simple task compared to, you know, we need to do electrical work or plumbing work, something that requires a more specialized or licensed skill set. And, you know, do you have the funds available to, you know, replace or do some fix up work, some renovation work? And I don't mean like I know a guy who, you know, has a few tools. Like, can you actually hire a contractor, you know, to come in and do the renovations, right? So I would say if you are in a position where you don't have that skill set and you don't have someone who's reliable who can do it for you, you know, meaning someone, say like a family or a friend that you trust that can actually come in and do that type of work, then you're probably better off staying to something that's move-in ready. I'll let Diane speak to this in greater detail, but I know there are loan options that allow you to have a renovation budget built in. So that could potentially be a thing if you are looking to kind of buy a house somewhat cheaper than market value and then kind of build it up and have that built-in equity. Yeah, but all in all, I think it kind of depends on the person, their situation, and how much you're willing to invest. That renovation costs time and money. Are you in a position where you need to get into a house right away and it be exactly how you need it to be so you can live? Or are you okay with being in a home that may have various renovations going over for several months? So,
Yeah, good points. I'm going to go ahead and kick it to Diane too.
Yeah, so again, renovation loans are certainly out there. There's some great programs that allow you to do that. What essentially happens is you buy the home and we do what we call an as completed value. So we're going to have you do all the plans and specifications as to what you're going to do, and then lend you based on that higher dollar amount. And as the work is completed, those funds are paid out. Keep in mind, it can't be done by you, the work. These are programs typically that you have to hire licensed contractors to do. So again, we're protecting our collateral and our loan to make sure that the work is being done properly. So they're out there, and if that's something you want to tackle, it's a longer process. by the time you buy the home or you renovate the home and then you finally move in. So again, certainly easy to do. And if you've got that kind of HGTV kind of mentality where you want to tackle that, then yes, they're available for you, and certainly explore that. And kind of fun to kind of make it your own, so to speak, as you're doing that.
Okay, excellent. And they have those through your mortgage, you said?
Most mortgage companies have them, yes. Most banks.
Mortgage companies.
Yeah.
Okay. And I did hear you speak to like doing some research around that. I think in different areas they have it too, like different suburban areas or in
Yeah.
the city area. And the mortgage
Yeah.
persons will know more
Yeah.
information about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
FHA has a nationwide program. It's a great FHA renovation program that's very popular. So
Nice.
Can I chime in with that really quickly and
Yeah,
just say that
please.
the standard homeowner policy will not cover your home while it's going through renovations. So when you're shopping for coverage, make sure you mention that to your agent so they can get you the right policy. And then whoever you have working on your home, if you get a contractor, make sure you see their policy to make sure they have coverage, just to cover your liability. Because now with your home, of course, we care about the dwelling, the structure itself. You own that home, you're liable for anything that happens on that property. If something happens there, somebody gets hurt, you can be sued for that. So your liability coverage is very important. Making sure that you have the right homeowners policy that's going to be active. Because what happens is if you have that standard policy, you're getting renovations, they fall off a ladder, break their neck, your homeowner's insurance company is going to say they're not covering you because they don't cover homes going through renovations. So just make sure you're having the proper policy coverage. And I'm sorry for that example, but things happen, right? And we just want to make sure that your liability is covered. So I just wanted to put that in there.
Yeah, right. Because my mind went to all over, like hospitals and da da da. But
Exactly.
so okay, I hope they survive because all right. Well, that's a good point. I did not know that, and I'm sure, especially during that time period. So, is that something that they would have to call the agent back to say, "Okay, the renovations are done, and now what?" Is it?
Yes.
Is that the recommendation?
That is what the recommendation, definitely. Give them a call when it starts. They'll put there's a policy you can get, but it's just not the standard homeowners policy. Then when it's over, you move back to a regular homeowners policy.
Okay. Well, while I have you, Pia, I do have another question from a viewer. And the question says, can you please explain again, like homeowners warranties? Is that something different? Yeah.
Yeah, it is different. So when you purchase the home, a lot of times you can get a warranty from the real estate company, or they may have a warranty specialist there. The warranty policy is a maintenance policy. If something breaks down or there's an issue with the home, they'll come in, repair, replace it for a lesser deductible than your homeowner's insurance as well, like usually a couple $100 depending on the policy that you get. They're usually not too expensive, under $1,000 for the year, maybe, depending on where you get it from. That's just an example. But that's more of a maintenance policy. The homeowner's insurance is something completely different. So I always recommend when people are purchasing new homes to do that. So then if you do have a water heater, I had a client where a water heater went out for them recently, leaked water everywhere, down in their basement. They're looking at $15,000 worth of damages. They just purchased a home 2 months ago. They had that policy in place, $500, and they're good. So it pays for itself very quickly if you have any issues. So I always recommend getting one of those if you have and you're able to. And I don't think you have to purchase it at the time of closing either. Do you, Brandon? Usually can't you purchase warranties almost at any time, or how does that work? Do you know?
Yep, you can get them pretty much at any time. You can have it added on prior to closing or after.
Yep.
Wonderful. Good to know. That's something to really talk about and dive deeper into with your insurance agent on that. Great questions. Thanks to our viewers, and keep them coming. You may also drop those in our comments or chat section, and we can look at that as well. You both mentioned at some point, okay, we were talking about if they should buy a first-time home house while move-in ready, or should they get one where they would do some renovations? So I'm going to ask this question and see if it's like, as far as buying a home in this market, what advice do you have for first-time buyers who might be nervous about bidding wars? versus a fast-paced market. That might determine if they want to do a renovation home just to get out of a bidding war of it all. Is that still a thing? And then what recommendations do you have for that?
Yeah, so in our market, multiple offers on a single property is pretty common nowadays. What I would try to remind clients is that there's always going to be a supply of houses. So if you miss out on one, there will definitely be something else coming that you'll find that you like. So I just try to remind people to have a little bit of flexibility. You know, there will always be other options. And when we're in that kind of bidding war process, what I like to do is reach out to the sellers and say, hey, outside of that bottom line dollar amount, offer price for your house, what other things can we do to kind of sweeten this offer for you? So sometimes a seller, for instance, may want to take a little more time to close so they can move or do whatever their next steps are going to be. Sometimes sellers want to close as fast as possible, or they don't want the offer tied up with an inspection for too long. So those are things we can kind of ask and say, hey, how can we, explore some options here that can make this deal great for both of us? So I would try to recommend to first-time buyers, don't necessarily be so worried about the bidding war, because there's kind of ways we can strengthen the offer outside of just money. And then also keep in mind that there will always be other options available too. So if one house doesn't work, there will definitely be more coming down the pipeline.
Brandon, what if you love that house? There is a thing.
There's going to be another one you love just as much.
Okay. So having some flexibility in that too.
Absolutely.
There'll be another one that you love as much.
Absolutely.
Okay. That sounds good. I guess too, it depends on the market and what you're looking for. You'll find something else.
For sure.
Okay. Well, a way to maybe when we're talking about costs and all of that, I'm going to jump it back to Pia about, can you explain why bundling policies? Why will that be helpful to do? They're always talking about bundle it. We see the commercials talking about bundle. Those are funny, by the way. But what are some of the things, like if you do your home, auto, life, what may be helpful for first-time buyers financially? Like, can we save some money somewhere?
We could definitely try. That's a great question, Sharon. So when you're looking, typically, historically, bundling is great. If you can get home, an auto, a life policy with the company, it can give you significant discounts. The market being as tough as it is now, that's not always the best fit. This is why it's great to have an independent agent. So let's talk about this for a second. If you go with a captive agency where they sell only one product, they only have one option, you either fit in this box, this is what we have, and that's it. When you go to an independent agent, they work for you, not the insurance company necessarily, and they have multiple options. They're able to shop you as a package with the companies and break it up just to see which is more cost effective. I always recommend doing that just to see, is it better to bundle or not? Because sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And then the other thing is look at different discounts that you can have. If you have some loss mitigation items in your home, such as if you have a central station burglar or fire alarm, you get a discount for that. If you have a water shutoff device, a device to shut your water off if it starts to overflow or do some weird things into your home. If you have a gas leak detector, those things could save you money. If you have kids and they have a 3.0 GPA on your auto insurance policy, that could save you money there. If you are over 55 and you're driving, you take one of those driver certifications, that could save you money there. Looking at discounts in all the areas could definitely help you and save you money on your policies. And then one thing with the market, with the insurance going up, I know a lot of people in different states are having issues with their insurance and their taxes. It's making their monies go up. We're counseling clients to look at higher deductibles. It might not be the easiest thing to do, but when we're talking about making a savings account, maybe have a savings account to where you can have maybe a $5,000, $3,000 deductible on your home. That can save you hundreds of dollars on your premiums annually. And since we're not filing frivolous claims, you could save money that way. So just taking a look, talking to your agent, building that relationship and asking them, What should I be looking at? How can I save money and make this more cost effective for me?
Okay, so after Diane gets all in your business, then your agent needs to get all in your business about how your kids doing. Do you have dogs? Do you have such and such? So all those questions are in order to save some money on this end, right?
Definitely, to save some money and make sure we put the proper plan in place. For the personal risk specialist, we look at your risk in your entire life. So not just your home. Your home is your biggest asset. You can have a loss in your automobile that can cause you to lose your home if you don't have the right coverage. So that's why having that whole conversation to make sure you have everything in place properly is very important.
Oh, wow. And that's a big one too. I did see one of the viewers had a question about having insurance coverage and like with pets and that kind of thing. So talking to your agent and just being honest, I think Diane brought that up too. Like we're here to help you, but we're gonna get all in your business. And so for that reason, making sure you answer with some honesty on that, especially on that front end. I hear you saying, Priya, like let's handle it now. So you don't have any blind spots.
They find out that you misrepresented yourself, you don't have any coverage. And that's a big thing. So you want to just go ahead up front. That's why that relationship is big with all of your whole team. That relationship is big. So you can just be upfront so we can put the right things in place for you so they work the way they're supposed to work.
Perfect. Diane, can I ask you to kind of jump in on this around some of that initial conversation that we had, but it was around, like you mentioned, credit reports and financial history. So thinking about this in a way that how could you delay or derail your mortgage approval? Like we're talking about being honest, we're talking about credit, and what's your advice on that?
So I'm not sure I understand your question, but again, that credit report tells me a lot. Okay, and a credit report is really your history of how you manage your finances, how you make your payments, and whether you make them on time. You don't need a lot of credit cards to build a credit score. One will do. Okay, I would rather see you have just one credit card, one loan, and not 15 credit cards. It doesn't make any sense. It's not going to help your credit score at all. So again, um, and I always tell people life happens, and sometimes you get into financial situations that make your credit scores go down. Credit is not, it's not permanent. You can rebuild it. And so you want to find that person who's going to be able to help you say what you should do. If you have a collection account, should you pay it off? Should you leave it alone? There's strategic ways to handle your credit, and there's ways to build your credit. So again, it all comes back to that team mentality, to find your tribe of people who will help you and help you build it and understand your credit and what it says about you. So um, again, that credit score is important, and we focus a lot on it. But there's ways we can help you build it, and figure out ways to do it. And so it's never permanent and it's never fatal. So again, you just need to figure out what you need to do to rebuild it. Okay. And I think that's a big lesson for people as life happens, and you do what you need to do to get through, and then you move on from there and you start to rebuild. So
well, you may have an opportunity to build their credit, especially while Brandon's finding you that perfect home.
that's right.
And then,
and you're saving money for that down payment. So again,
yes,
it's not something you need to do today. Okay, but again, be prepared, and I think that's a big lesson, is to be fully prepared to buy a house, because it's your biggest, as Pia says many times, it's your biggest investment.
And Pia reminds us to protect that. Yes. Okay. Before we go, I mean, I'm just awed with all the information that we had tonight. But before we close, I'd like each of you to just share one practical thing. If this people are just tuning in now, and want to hear what we had to say tonight, they can definitely watch the recordings. But if there's one thing to walk away with, that practical knowledge or actionable tip, what would you say for our viewers and as they preparing to purchase their first home? I'm going to start with Diane.
Yep. So my best tip for everybody is to get educated. I want you to know your credit scores. I want you to know what your credit report says about you. Take a first time homebuyer class. There's many of them out there that will give you lots of information about your credit, how to buy a home, a little bit about insurance. They're offered by lots of agencies. Prepare your budget, know what you want to spend. And then research down payment assistance programs. There's a lot of them out there. The state has a great program. A lot of cities, counties have programs. Research those so you take advantage of all those programs out there. If you're a first generation buyer, if your parents didn't own a home, there's money out there to help you buy a house. So research all of that and just get educated. And then build your team. That's my biggest thing is build your team and have that team of people are behind you.
Awesome. Brandon, one practical, actionable tip you want to leave our viewers with?
Diane presented a lot of great information. So I
Mhm.
do think being educated is really important. To piggyback off that, I would also say to know your why. If you're buying a house, you're shopping for this, huge investment that you're going to make. Why are you doing this? Does it actually fit into your goals? And just really understanding why you're going to go through this whole process and the benefit that you hope to get from it. And then with that, you paired with that education, and you're good to go.
Nice. Having a why, know their why versus if this is a rental property that you're interested in, it's just how long do you plan to live in this house? Some things that you may want to consider. And definitely, I'm going to kick it to Pia about the insurance and how that is impactful. What's your one actionable step? I mean, you've already dropped the mic several times, but if just jumping in, what do you have to say, Pia?
I would say this is your process. Come up with a list of questions and what's important to you. What qualities do you want your insurance agent, your realtor, your loan officer to have? Make a list. And then to start off a relationship with an insurance agent, if you don't have one, maybe get a renter's insurance policy. This way you could call, start the process that way. Having a good insurance score is going to help you have a better insurance premium. A renter's insurance policy starts that process. So come up with a list of questions, what's important to you, and reach out and start building this relationship. So when the time comes, your team will be ready-made. You already have it together.
Mm-hmm. Bringing us back to that team concept and making sure you're clear on that. I am so thankful to have you guys have joined us tonight as we talk about securing the bag, then the deed, and our home buying secrets shared. I feel like there was some secrets shared tonight. I wish I had taken this or been a part of this a few years ago, a few months ago. And so I hope for our viewers too, that you feel like you're walking away with some actionable steps and some answers. We covered a lot tonight, financing, or find the right house, protecting your investment, protecting that home as an investment once you've secured it. Again, huge thanks to our panelists, Brandon Odom, Pia T-Belt, and Diane Walenta. Got it. I don't know why. I told you, it's creeping up on my bedtime, y'all. Okay, but thank you. And again, thank you to our viewers who are joined us tonight for those excellent questions that you were sending to us. I also want to thank our marvelous tech team who's behind the scene, making it all happen for us. There's one last thing I want to ask our viewers to do. We will have a QR code that goes up at the end. So get your phones and devices ready, iPads, or however you want to do that, to take a moment to complete the post-episode survey. You can have that QR code on the screen. It will be available afterwards. This is recorded, so you can grab it there if you haven't. But please take a moment to do that. We do listen. We appreciate your feedback. And we will see you next time at Beyond Table Talk. Thank you all.
Thank you for joining us for this impactful episode of Beyond Table Talk. To our loyal viewers, thank you for watching, engaging, and continuing the conversation beyond the screen. Your presence here matters. We are deeply grateful to our guest moderator and distinguished panelists for sharing their time, perspectives, and expertise. Your voice drives this platform forward. Please take a moment to view our moderator and panelists' bios and information. We extend our sincere appreciation to our ongoing supporters. Your commitment to dialogue, equity, and innovation allows us to host vital conversation like today's. This show is possible because of your investment in real stories and real solutions. There are many ways to engage beyond the broadcast. Explore past episodes, RSVP for upcoming conversations, sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media to stay in the loop. If you or your organization would like to sponsor an episode, support our work, scan below. Let's go beyond Table Talk. If you'd like to continue to support our mission, consider making a donation or volunteering, or even subscribing to our newsletter to stay involved. We offer a heartfelt thank you to the production crew, creative team, and coordinators and volunteers who bring Beyond Table Talk to life. Your dedication and excellence are evident in every episode. Please take a moment to share your opinions with us in our post-episode wrap-up. Scan the code. Keep the momentum going, and remember, the most meaningful conversations don't just happen at the table, they live beyond it. We'll see you next time on Beyond Table Talk.